Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking into a story all about financial fraud, and it's got this really interesting twist. It's all about religion and trust.
Mm.
You sent us this article, right? And the title kind of says it all. The Texas preacher who used God to steal, exposing a shocking scam. So, yeah, we're definitely in for a wild ride with this one.
Absolutely. And, this case is really a prime example of how easily our trust can be exploited,
Yeah.
especially when it gets mixed up with faith.
Yeah, for sure. So we're talking about this guy, Doc Gallagher. He wasn't just some small-time preacher. He was really embedded in the Christian community in Fort Worth, had a radio show, even wrote a book called Jesus Christ Money Master. Like, he was really leaning into that whole faith angle, huh?
And that's exactly how the manipulation starts. He wasn't just giving financial advice. He was presenting himself as some kind of, like, spiritual guide, someone with this, special access to God's financial wisdom. That's heavy stuff. It makes people think twice before questioning anything. Like, am I doubting God's plan if I doubt this guy?
Yeah, you don't want to go against God's financial plan, right? It's like setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly.
It's almost like he was creating this aura around himself.
No?
God's on my side, so you can trust me with your money, kind of thing.
Precisely. And that's such a powerful tactic, psychologically. It plays right into people's deep need for certainty, especially when it comes to their money and their faith.
And it's not just the words. The article mentions how Gallagher went all out, showering clients with flowers, books, even gift cards. Like he was trying to blur the lines between being their financial advisor and their friend.
Yeah, that's classic. Build that personal connection, make it harder for people to question anything. I mean, who suspects a friend of scamming them?
Especially a friend who seems so devout. Even his motto was, faith in the future delivers power in the present. Catchy, but kind of creepy when you know the whole story.
Oh, absolutely. It's like he weaponized those positive phrases to get people to let their guard down.
And then hit him with the pitch, which was, of course, a classic Ponzi scheme, promising those crazy high returns, 15% or more, but really just using money from new investors to pay off the old ones.
Yeah, the classic financial house of cards. And what's interesting here is how he specifically targeted the Christian community. It wasn't just any group of investors. It was people who shared his faith. People already inclined to trust him because of that shared belief system.
So it's like he was intentionally taking advantage of that, using their faith to gain their trust and ultimately their money, right?
Yeah, that's the disturbing part. And it highlights a really important point. Just because someone shares your beliefs doesn't mean they're trustworthy.
You're making me think of that saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But how do you even tell the difference when someone's so good at playing the part?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And we'll definitely delve deeper into that as we go. But for now, I think the most important thing to remember is this. No matter how trustworthy someone seems, always do your own homework before making any big financial decisions.
So in Gallagher's case, how did he actually convince people to hand over their savings? Did he have any specific tactics besides that whole religious angle?
He did, actually. And this is where things get really interesting. He used to hold these, lavish events, almost like revivals, but focused on financial prosperity. Picture a charismatic preacher, packed auditorium, promising you not only salvation, but wealth beyond your wildest dreams.
So he was playing on people's desire for both spiritual and material fulfillment, offering the whole package, huh? Ticket to heaven and a fat bank account.
Exactly. And he would also use testimonials from supposedly satisfied investors to add to his credibility. It created this kind of feedback loop. People saw others getting rich and thought, hey, if they can do it, so can I.
And all while he's quoting scripture, talking about God's blessings, making it seem like it's all part of some divine plan.
Right, which made it even harder for people to question him. Who wants to be seen as doubting God's will, especially in a community where faith is such a big part of life?
It's like he created this perfect storm of manipulation. But what about the actual investment strategy itself? The article mentions he was promising these insane returns, like 15% or more. Was he just making it all up?
Pretty much Ponzi schemes, they don't actually involve real investments. It's all smoke and mirrors. He'd take money from new investors, use some of it to pay off the earlier ones, creating that illusion of success, and then pocket the rest.
So it's kind of like a pyramid scheme, right? Where the people at the top profit off the people below them.
It's a similar concept, yeah. But the structure is a little different. In a pyramid scheme, you're actively recruiting new members, and your earnings are directly tied to how many people you bring in. In a Ponzi scheme, the focus is on the investment itself, and the recruitment is more passive. But the bottom line is the same. It's unsustainable, and eventually, it all comes crashing down.
And when it did, in Gallagher's case, The article talks about how widespread the devastation was. People lost their life savings, their homes, everything.
And it's important to remember, the financial loss is just one part of the story. The betrayal, the shame, the guilt. Those emotional wounds can be even more devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's heartbreaking. But were there any, like, red flags that people could have picked up on? Anything that should have tipped them off that something wasn't right?
There were, and this is where it gets really important for our listeners, because understanding these red flags can help you protect yourself from similar scams, whether they're disguised as religious schemes or something else entirely.
Okay, yeah, let's break that down. What are some of those red flags?
I think one of the biggest ones is the promise of really high returns, but with little or no risk. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, that's that old saying, right? But sometimes it can be so tempting, especially if you're looking for a quick way to get ahead financially.
Oh, for sure. And scammers, they know exactly how to play on that desire. They'll use these high-pressure sales tactics, create a sense of urgency like, this opportunity won't last, or there are only a few spots left, to push you into making a quick decision.
So they're trying to bypass that logical part of your brain and appeal straight to your emotions.
Exactly.
Did Gallagher use any of these tactics, like specifically?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He'd use all that religious language to make his schemes seem like they were part of God's plan. And he held these really elaborate seminars, too, to create that sense of exclusivity and urgency.
So it was a combo of playing on their faith and their desire for, like, financial security.
Exactly. And he was very careful about his image, too. Donated to charities, volunteered in the community, surrounded himself with other well-respected people from the church.
So he was creating this image of being a good, upstanding Christian, almost like using his good deeds to hide what he was really doing.
Yeah, exactly. And it worked for a long time, too. He managed to keep it going for over a decade before it finally fell apart.
A decade. Wow. That's crazy. But how did it end? Did someone report him?
Hmm.
Or?
That's a good question. Sometimes it's a whistleblower, someone who figures out what's going on and reports it. Other times the scheme just gets too big and it can't support itself anymore.
So it's like a bubble that eventually bursts.
Exactly. And with Gallagher, it seems like it was a mix of things that led to his downfall. Some investors started getting suspicious when they didn't see the returns they were promised, and others began questioning his investment strategies, which were getting pretty out there, risky.
So the cracks started to show. But it's still wild that it went on for so long. Like a decade is a long time to keep a scam going.
Yeah, it is. And I think it shows just how powerful manipulation can be and how psychological factors play a role when
Yeah.
someone's really good at exploiting our weaknesses, especially those related to trust and faith. It can be so hard to see the truth.
It makes you wonder if there's any way to protect yourself from that.
There's no foolproof method, but there are definitely steps you can take to minimize your risk.
Okay, let's talk about that. What can people do to protect themselves?
Well, first of all, be aware of those red flags we talked about. If someone's promising crazy high returns with little to no risk, be skeptical.
So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Got it. What else?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't understand something, don't be embarrassed to ask for an explanation.
Yeah, a lot of people are afraid to seem naive, especially when it comes to money.
Right. But remember, it's your money. You have every right to ask questions. And make sure you're comfortable with any investment.
That makes sense. Ask questions, don't be afraid to look dumb. Anything else?
Do your research. Don't just take someone's word for it. Look into the investment, the company, the people behind it.
So basically, a little online sleuthing can go a long way.
Absolutely. And don't forget about trusted sources. Talk to a financial advisor, a lawyer, or a friend who knows about investing.
Get a second opinion. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially one that's, made by a smooth talker. You got it. And one more thing. Never, ever feel pressured to make a decision on the spot. If someone's pushing you to invest right away, walk away.
So no matter how good it sounds, if you feel pressured, that's a huge red flag.
Absolutely. Legitimate investments don't require hasty decisions. Take your time, do your research, and trust your gut.
Okay, so we've talked about red flags, how to prevent it. But what if someone's already fallen victim to a scam? What can they do?
Well, first and foremost, they need to know they're not alone. It happens to a lot of people, even smart, experienced people.
It can happen to anyone, really. These scams are designed to be tricky.
Exactly. And the first step is to acknowledge what happened and seek support.
So reach out to a friend, family member, or maybe a therapist.
Right. And depending on the scam, there might be legal options too.
Like report it to the police.
Exactly. Contact the police, the FBI, or the Securities and Exchange Commission.
There are resources out there to help people who've been scammed.
Absolutely. And even though you might not get all your money back, taking action can help you find some closure and stop the scammer from hurting other people.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not just about the money. It's about holding the scammer accountable.
Exactly. And sometimes just sharing your story can help prevent others from falling victim to the same scam.
It can break that cycle of silence and shame.
Exactly. And empower others to come forward and get help.
This has been a real eye-opener, this deep dive into the world of financial scams. We've covered so much. Doc Gallagher's case, how scammers operate, how to protect yourself, what to do if you're a victim.
It has been pretty comprehensive,
Yeah.
and I hope our listeners feel more equipped to navigate this, complex world of financial scams.
I think the big takeaway is knowledge is power.
Hmm.
The more we understand about these scams, the better we can protect ourselves and the people we care about.
Couldn't agree more. Awareness is our best defense.
And vigilance, right.
Mm.
Got to stay informed, stay skeptical, trust your gut.
Absolutely. And remember that golden rule. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Listening to all this, it's interesting to see how Gallagher used those lavish events. It kind of reminds me of how some multi-level marketing companies operate. That same kind of excitement and hype to get people to join.
Oh, yeah, totally. There are definitely some similarities there, that whole community vibe, the promise of getting rich, the charismatic leaders. It's a powerful mix.
Yeah, it's like they're selling a lifestyle, not just a product. And it's easy to get caught up in that.
For sure. It plays on those deep desires we all have, belonging, success, a better life. And they wrap it all up in this language of empowerment.
Which makes it even harder to see what's really going on.
Exactly.
I guess the difference is, with a legitimate business, there's an actual product or service behind it all. But with scams, it's all just an illusion.
Right. There's no real substance. It's all about making money for the people at the top and taking advantage of everyone else.
So how can people protect themselves from this kind of thing, whether it's religious investments or multi-level marketing?
I think the same principles apply. Do your research, ask questions. Don't let anyone pressure you into making a decision.
So due diligence is key no matter what.
Exactly. And be aware of those emotional triggers, the things they use to hook you in.
Like wanting to be rich or successful.
Yeah, exactly. When you're aware of those triggers, you can make more rational decisions.
So take a step back. Look at it objectively.
Right.
But what if someone's already caught up in something like this?
Well, the first thing is to remember you're not alone. It happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, these scammers are good at what they do.
Exactly. The important thing is to take action. Talk to someone you trust.
A friend, family member, maybe a professional.
Right. And if you think there's illegal activity going on, report it to the authorities.
The police, the FBI.
Yeah, they can help you figure out your options.
And remember, asking for help isn't a weakness. It's about taking control and preventing more harm.
Absolutely.
Well, this deep dive has been quite a journey. We've looked at how trust can be abused, how scammers operate, how to protect ourselves.
And hopefully we've given our listeners some tools to navigate this tricky world of scams.
Absolutely. The key takeaways are trust your gut, do your research, and never be afraid to ask questions.
And if you think something's not right, don't hesitate to get help.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it informative.
It's been a pleasure.